Sosuke Aizen has been released and he is the most complex character we have yet, and yet he looks amazing. Now that we have the battle data, I'm going to be breaking down everything we know about him so far, but as you should know already, run that shit back! What is going on, y'all? This is the Aizen breakdown. We finally have his battle data, and so we have a much better idea of what Aizen we're looking at now. Sosuke Aizen is described to be a character who evolves over time. Although very unlikely or unheard of, I would classify Aizen as an evolve archetype. As his fighting spirit accumulates automatically, the battles that he's in will themselves evolve. As time passes from the start of his battle, he is forced into his transition state of second stage Hogyoku Fusion. And as his fighting spirit accumulates from that stage, he can then awaken. After awakening, when his fighting spirit reaches its max and his own soul reaches 0, meaning he dies, he will then be allowed to reawaken to 4th stage Hogyoku Fusion. Very similar to Hollow Ichigo. Also, instead of his spiritual power, there is a Hogyoku Fusion level, and the performance of his techniques change depending on the level. At the start of the battle, Kyoka Suigetsu consumes the reverse gauge and allows him to nullify some characters' soul-destroying techniques or their Kikon moves. This hints that he might not be able to stop every Kikon move. That's basically how he's described. Now, although we don't get to see Kyoka Suigetsu in the battle data, we can assume that it might be attributed to one of his attacks or his signature move. This should be the only Aizen we have. The reason is that because he does in fact have his Shikai abilities. Kyoka Suigetsu is in his moveset. Although it doesn't break down exactly how we'll be doing it or how we'll be using it, it states at the beginning of the battle he can use it to nullify some Kikon moves. So that might mean that it's something automatic, or it might be that we can actually activate it. Hopefully it's the latter, but we'll find out soon, I'm sure. The good thing is it's in the game. It says he does have a unique trait, and where similar to Kenpachi, he can take a stance, and while he holds down the button, he's immune to recoil from the damages of an opponent's attack. When he releases that button, or a certain time has passed, he will attack by releasing a shockwave to the surrounding area. If you receive an attack while in the stance, the damage of the shockwave will increase. So similar to Kenpachi, essentially he will take a stance. I don't think he's nullifying damage, he's just nullifying the recoil because he has a good amount of durability. His strength comes in as a 4, his speed comes in as a 2, his range is a 3, his durability a 4, and his techniques are a 5. Makes perfect sense given that he has a good amount of variety in his toolkit, and really, I mean, he can do so much. In his spiritual pressure move 1, when activated, the guard gauge decreases, and until it reaches 0, the opponent's attacks will be nullified from any recoil. Now, because it says that in that way, it really is like he's tanking damage when he does his spiritual pressure move 1. So with that in mind, it might be that he's really not taking damage from his unique skill and also his spiritual pressure move 1. The way that it's stated, it doesn't necessarily say he's negating damage. His spiritual pressure move 2 allows him to do a slash forward, and if it hits, he follows up with a black coffin that cancels the chant. Damage increases according to his Hogyoku Fusion level. As the fusion with his Hogyoku progresses, he becomes a being that transcends reason, and his abilities have been enhanced when he is in his awakening state. It takes time to awaken, but his stats significantly increase compared to other characters, and by increasing his Hogyoku Fusion, it becomes possible to reach even higher powers. When his fighting gauge reaches its maximum from his awakening state and his soul reaches 0, he will be able to fuse with the Hogyoku and be revived into his Hogyoku Fusion level 4 or Hogyoku Fusion 4th stage. One thing to note about his Hogyoku Fusion level, the maximum he can reach is level 5. It exists in place of the spiritual power and accumulates automatically during battle. The performance of the technique is enhanced according to the Hogyoku Fusion level. When he's in base state, After a certain amount of time has passed since the beginning of the battle, the character will transition to the second stage of the Hogyoku Fusion, and the Hogyoku Fusion level will temporarily be lost. Although it is weaker than normal, it is easier to attack from a distance with special flash attacks and step quick attacks. From this state, it is possible to awaken by accumulating fighting spirit gauge to the maximum. What that's saying in essence is basically when he's in his second stage, he no longer has his Hogyoku Fusion level. He then has to accumulate fighting spirit gauge, which you do by letting it accumulate over time or by taking damage. Essentially, when he's in his second state, he's going to be at his most vulnerable because he doesn't have the choice to awaken. Once he's in that state, he'll need to get his fighting gauge as fast as possible so that he can therefore awaken to his third state. Now, one thing I'm wondering is, can you revert back to your original base state? The way it appears, it doesn't look like it. You're being forced to awaken because you're taking damage. Your fighting spirit gauge is known to be able to accumulate over time or by taking damage, so therefore it's not something you can activate by fighting someone and doing damage to them. It's something you're going to have to wait for or by allowing yourself to take damage, which I don't think is going to be favorable for you. On the other hand, as Aizen's enemy, you should be attacking him aggressively at the very beginning because he's going to be much weaker, especially because he can't fire off as many techniques and because he needs to wait to get to his awakening. Once you've reached your awakening state, that's when things really turn up the heat. You'll get a significant stat boost, which essentially probably means that he's going to have a maximum of 5 in his attack, or his durability might even be increased as well. His speed might even increase. It really is going to depend, but one thing that I find really interesting is that instead of his spiritual power gauge, he in fact replaces it with the Hogyoku. Now, the spiritual power gauge is something that accumulates when attacking an opponent. The gauge is consumed when activating a spiritual pressure move. So what that means, I believe, is that his Hogyoku Fusion, since it takes in place of it, it still does the same thing. It still does accumulate when you're attacking your opponent, so you are going to want to stay aggressive if you can. At the start of the battle, one thing to note is that the effects of Kyoka Suigetsu consumes the reverse gauge and allows him to nullify some characters' soul-destroying techniques. So we do in fact have his Shikai. It's basically a damage nullifier. And it makes sense because it lets him stop an attack that would otherwise kill him or destroy his soul. So it's a good offset. I'm sure a few of us do wish we could have a more controlled Shikai, but all in all, he does have everything in his toolkit, all in one character, all in one model, and we really thought they were going to have to split it up in two just to be able to do it properly. So I will say, all respect to the devs, this is a very strong character. I don't see anyone who wouldn't use Aizen if given the right talent. I mean, his ease of use is really a 2 out of 5, so he's not going to be easy to pick up, and I think that's a good thing. We don't want someone to just be able to play Aizen normally. If you're a good Aizen, you deserve to be a good Aizen. It must be all in this plan. Wow. Honestly, Aizen looks sick. I'm really excited to see more of him, but ultimately, I mean, they really outdid themselves. Tamsoft, props to you. I know a lot of people are still wondering about Monster Aizen. I really think that's just going to be either a boss battle or it's going to be a Kikon move, but I don't think they're going to make a whole moveset out of it. If you watch the fight between Aizen and Ichigo, Monster Aizen really doesn't get that much. He gets a projectile, he has increased strength, but there's not much to him. So I think they really did the best thing they could with Aizen. One last note I'll leave you with is that I do think Momo is coming up shortly. The reason why is because on Aizen's bio, it mentions Momo. If you go to Toshiro's bio, it also mentions Momo. It seems that they release a female character every few characters, so at least every 5 characters or so, they release a new female character. And they have been pretty consistent with that. So each line is at least one female. So I do believe there's going to be a female coming up, and it's going to be either Orihime or Momo. But you let me know down in the comments who you think is next after Yama, who's coming up next week. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe as it helps the channel tremendously. But I'm your boy Saint Irving, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace.